and a special guest, Chris Severson, which is an ex-US Special Forces Top Gun instructor and currently works with a startup investment bank, Atlas Amara, if I say so.
Atlas Amara.
Yeah, so we're going to talk about leadership tonight and entrepreneurial finance. And I'm gonna give the word to Cary from Findy, which also sponsored the food and drink and everything. So the great pizza is thanks to Findy. So it is.
Thanks for having me. Cary here. Meet you. Thank you for coming and for finding this on a map. It actually was a little bit harder than it should have been, but this is a really cool space. And we went over to the makerspace next door. We checked that out as well. So if you guys haven't seen that, at some point come back, and especially if you're into like woodworking and stuff, it was pretty cool. So you just drive down these roads and you never know what's inside these buildings. So it's pretty incredible. So I think that's really like a metaphor for people, right? You walk down the street and you walk past people all the time, and you have absolutely no idea, who these people may be. I was in the Radisson Blu Hotel in London, in Portman Square, and I was there it was for my MBA. It was my first. It was the evening before my first day as an MBA student, right? Go back to school, and I go down to the gym. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna do a bit of workout, and there's this dude in there with this like U.S. Marines shirt on, T-shirt on, and I'm like, I think that's the guy from my class. I'd never met him, and it's Chris, obviously. And I was like, you know what? I just based on that guy's LinkedIn profile, I think he's gonna be like, yes sir, like oh god, start talking to me and all this. Acronyms and we're like drill sergeant style. But anyway, we just got chatting, and I was like, wow, what a nice person! Like, what an incredibly nice, humble. I'd read his LinkedIn profile, so I'm kind of in awe, and I'm like, wow, this guy's top gun pilot, the movie. I wanted to ask you all these questions. It was funny because we talked about doing it. We never actually did it during the MBA, but it was really fun to actually show the movie. And then I said to Chris, I said, it would be really fun. You play the movie Top Gun, and then you pause it every time they get something wrong. And he's like, nah, that would never work. I'd have to pause it every time we got something right. That was pretty funny. So, the image behind us, we actually built this a couple of days ago in like 5 minutes. Just playing around with Findy. So, Findy is a company, the majority of which is based here in Bucharest. So, hands up, Findy guys. You can see them. They're wearing these really cool hoodies that I forgot to wear. I was like, I'm presenting, so I better wear a shirt that makes me look like I'm actually an executive. I can't wear a hoodie. Only Zuckerberg gets to do that, right? When he presents. But thank you, Facebook, for live streaming. But basically, I met Chris 5 years ago. Next month. It's like we're about 3 weeks away from 5 years that we've known each other. We built this site just messing around with finding technology. And we're here in Bucharest, and I think it's worth pointing out that the vast majority, 99.9% of what you see on this screen and what you will see in terms of examples of what we've done, 99.9% of what we do is based here. So even though we were a British company, we're headquartered in the UK, the vast majority of the value that's delivered in what is today valued at a $5 million company 2 years after its founding, the vast majority of that is Romanian. It's Bucharestian and Piteștian and Craiova, and I don't even know where everybody else is from, but I hope from Bucharest, because otherwise they're going to feel left out. But it is pretty incredible that we're sitting here because this city, this country, is a metaphor. This building is a metaphor for this country, which is, you look at it on a map and you're like, yeah, I'll go visit there sometime. But actually, when you get inside and you look around, it's full of incredibly talented people young people who want to make a difference. And I'm really proud to, to be, I don't want to say the boss, because it feels kind of, sometimes I have to be the boss, but, to be a team member, really, of a group of people who continually astonish me with their ability to step up and really perform like the elite of the tech world. And elite is a word we're going to use during this talk. I want you guys to understand if there's three things you take away from tonight's presentation / discussion, interactive Q&A, everything else. There's three things you take away. The first is understanding what elite means in your own context. So some of you maybe you're all interested in tech, maybe some of you are interested in being doctors or on their way to being doctors or are doctors or dentists. What does elite mean in your field, right? It's a relative term because, we always strive to improve as humans. So, was Chopin the elite in terms of composition and performance? Or was Rachmaninoff better than him? What does elite actually mean? Well, elite means you really are at the top of what you're doing. And these things obviously change over time. You take, for example, there's these bells they make in China. They make them out of metal, and it takes about 30 years to learn how to make one properly. It's like a 30-year apprenticeship. And it's absolutely incredible, but nobody does this anymore, especially in the West. You're an elite bell maker. What does that mean? But I think that we should all understand, if we take the first thing to take away is, what are you working on, and do you actually want to be elite in what it is that you're doing? That's the first thing I want you to take away. The second thing I want you to take away is the difference between respect for yourself, pride in what you do, and humility. So if you're incredibly good at what you do, and you totally respect yourself, can you be confident without being arrogant? How do you achieve the confidence to know that you can do exactly what you are required to do, that you can achieve exactly what's in your head? Whatever it is that you visualize, can you do that? Yes, you can do that. You not only can visualize it, but you can get it done, but that doesn't need to make you arrogant. It can make you humble. And that's a lesson that I've learned from Chris, is how you can accomplish so much and be so humble at the same time. It's truly phenomenal. But being humble without underselling yourself, right? And that's really, really important, especially in Eastern Europe. Eastern Europe, there's constantly this thing that, all right, okay, you're from Eastern Europe, so you're going to be cheaper, it's going to be lower quality, you're not going to be, and Eastern Europeans, when they achieve things, and this is a broad generalization, and I don't want to get caught in this with culturalism here, but generally speaking, it's been drummed into you that because you're from Eastern Vienna, that whatever it is that you deliver is not going to be as good as what gets done in Silicon Valley or New York or London or wherever. That's a total fallacy, right? Complete fallacy. You can deliver that quality, that professionalism, that excellence, that elite performance. You can deliver that. You can do that. You do not need to undersell yourself. So how can you be humble without underselling yourself? And how does humility and being elite, how are those two things linked? And the third thing that I want you to take away from this is about judgments. And you never know from a person that you meet, from the color of their skin to their height to their chosen hairstyle. I'm not singling you out for this, but it is really, you never know from the first impression that you get from somebody. We were talking about this the other day about judgments and snap judgments, and the difference between being trained and having this skill to be able to make a really quick judgment call, and how to limit that, and basically say, well, I have this impression, but let me validate that impression. Let me see first if there are other things that I can be evaluating that are going to really give you the true understanding of the value of this human being that's in front of you. So everybody makes judgment calls. I gave a talk a couple of years ago, and I talked about making judgment calls. And you do need to do it because there's only a certain amount of time like a presentation only has a certain amount of time, and we just lost our we lost our screen. And so those are the three things that I want you to take away. Okay, I'm gonna hand over to Chris to introduce himself. And like I said, we just put together this little site from military.com. We picked as the sort of brand. And what would it look like if you had F-18 videos of F-18 fighter jets, and that's what you wanted to go see? How would that look? And this is what our company does, and I'll get a little bit more into that. But I'd like to turn the mic over now to Chris, so Chris can introduce himself, talk a little bit about himself. We do actually have that in the presentation, which I'd like to get to that slide. And so this video is essentially what Finding does, which is it presents you with the best videos that you can find about a given subject, and it gives you enough variety and engagement that you can pick the video that you want to see based on the preview that is in front of you in this very moment. So are you interested in cockpit footage? You want to see like external footage? And this is basically what we do is we try to make video more exciting and more interesting. And I'll go into that in a little bit more detail. And even though this presenter thing is plugged in, you don't seem to be getting the click through. This is Finding, a team. So you'll see most of the guys that are on this, and I know it's guys, but hey, we are hiring, so ladies out there, if you're interested in joining the team, I'll talk a little bit about the talent opportunities that we have. And so from here to here, everybody's in this room, and then Jim is based in the UK. Our advisor team is pretty cool as well. We got himself. So thanks very much for coming tonight again, and hopefully we'll talk about things that are interesting. And if you have any questions, you want to say something, just stick your hand up and jump right in. We're not going to have like a real structured presentation. It's going to be more of a talk and a discussion. We're going to kind of interview each other, but we're going to take questions from the audience at any time.
Thanks, Paul. So, for myself, I spent a 20-year career in the U.S. Marines. I was an F-18 pilot, which you see those in the background there. And I had an opportunity when I was a younger fighter pilot to go to Top Gun. I graduated from there and then become a lead instructor for in our squadrons and for our Marines. My last role was essentially the number 2 person in our training squadron. We had about 45 F-18s on the ramp, and we had about 800 people. I left the Marine Corps and I met Paul in the Columbia London Business School MBA program, and then because of that, met some folks at Barclays at the investment bank. So I left San Diego, California, moved to London with my family, and went there and joined Barclays. And then from there, was recruited to join a startup based in Dubai called Apple Smart. For those who are familiar with banking, Bob Diamond used to be the CEO of Barclays PLC in London. Bob left, set up a fund, and then co-founded Apple Smart, one with an African she stacker, and joined that as the head of strategy and planning. So this is maybe the more exciting than banking. Is not that exciting. Neither is startup is exciting. I don't know about banking, but this is what I did. Some of the things from my background, I have just about 2,500 hours in F-18, which is pictured there. Almost 300 carrier landings, and I did over half of those at night. I supported combat operations in Iraq and in Afghanistan, and flying from the Persian Gulf, and also from the Gulf of Oman, which is just south of Pakistan. Done non-combat deployments to Asia, to South Korea, Thailand, and Japan. You'll see down here, the military likes patches and things you put on your uniform. So these are a couple. I have my wings here on your left. There's a 2000 patch. The patch in the middle is the Top Gun patch. So when you graduate Top Gun, you get to wear that patch. And I'll talk a little bit about what the patch means to me and what the patch means to those that wear it and what we need to uphold once you are able to wear it. I went to the School of Advanced Warfighting. The Marine Corps takes, in the United States Marine Corps, there's roughly about 1,800 majors, at the rank of majors, about 1,800 majors. They select 16 through this process, and in that process, go to school for a year. You read about 20,000 pages of history. I spent about almost 8 weeks traveling the world's major battlefields, all the way around the world, and to become a strategic planner. I got an MBA, and that was in the same program, all. So that's my background, and then, like I said, I don't know, banking is just something exciting. So investment banking at Barclays, working traders, and now with Atlas Farm, which I'll talk about a little bit towards the end. What that means. So so that's me, and I think we'll talk about we'll get into some of the elite stuff here on the next slide. You want to
Sure.
click through that?
Anybody have any questions here
Yeah.
about what these mean and anything else about his experience? Like 290, I'm going to ask you a question on this. 296 carrier arrested landing. That means that basically the hook comes out the back of the plane, right? And you land on a ship at night. Over half of those are at night. Can you just talk us through what that's like and the level of training that you have to get to the confidence?
Sure.
When you're flying a $70 million plane?
Right. So these are the older ones. So we're about 50 million. These are about 50 million US.
50?
50 million planes. And so
that's 10. I'd have to tell the startup 10 times to buy one.
Buy one.
Okay.
Used.
Just to get an example, used one.
Used one.
How many miles on it?
So it's great. It's so when you start the process, you go through flight school. I'll come to kind of talk about this. So you go through flight school. You start out with everyone that's going to be a pilot, hopefully wants to be a pilot, and then you make these selection criteria along the way. So you start out with primary flight training, and then they select people that are going to be helicopter pilots, the ones that are going to be fixed wing pilots, like transport and fighters, and then you select, then you down select to those that are just going to be fighters, and then from there you go to intermediate advanced jet training. And part of that process towards the end is you go carrier qualify for the first time. So you go out and then the training airplane first, and then eventually when I selected for F-18s, that airplane, and then went out and carrier qualified in that airplane. But
Carrier qualified.
Carrier
so
qualified.
that means you've got it. Is there a difference between people who can and can't land on a ship?
That's right. So you go out and when you carrier qualify the first time, it's just in the daytime. So you come into the landing pattern and you come in. Makes me think we should put a video up, but we can do that later. But you see, so you roll up behind the ship, and it's 15 to 18 seconds of you flying and looking at the ship, and there's a lens you look at, and it shows you, are you above or below glide slope. So you come down at 3 degrees, and then the goal is there's 4 wires that you need to catch, and obviously you want to land in the middle. So you want to land halfway between the second and third wire, and then catch the third wire. So that's what you should do. In the training squadron, towards the end, I would take out and lead young pilots going out to do their first F-18 carrier qualifications. And in the daytime, they're pretty good. And you see they sometimes they make it, sometimes they don't. If they're too high, and there's people on the ship that help you with this. We call them LSOs, landing signal officers. And they stand at the back of the ship and help guide you down if you're making not great decisions and not flying that well. They'll tell you to go around and try it again. But when guys come down at night after the first night landings, you can imagine you're in the middle of the ocean. There's no light. There's no ambient light. Maybe starlight if there's no clouds. You can see nothing but the little bit of runway that is the carrier in your instruments.
So that's lit up with some lights.
Lights, yeah.
On it.
That's right.
And so to give us a sense of like dimension, how wide is an aircraft carrier deck, or the landing area?
Yeah, so the landing area is about
in meters.
So 20 meters wide.
20 meters wide. So roughly the width of this room.
Yeah. It'll be a little bit wider than this
A
room.
little bit wider than this room.
And it'll be about 115 meters long.
150 meters long, and you've got to
The
land.
whole thing.
And you've got to land within how many meters? So what's like the space that you have to land in?
You want to land. You land about 25 meters from the back of the ship.
25 meters from the back of the ship, and how fast are you going?
You're going about you're going in nautical miles per hour, about 145.
So 220 kilometers.
About 220 kilometers an hour.
So imagine that top speed of most cars that you guys have ever driven in.
Oh, easily. You're going faster than almost all cars.
Almost all cars.
And when you cross the back of the ship, you only clear the back of the ship by about 4.5 meters. So that's how far above. When you at the very back of the ship, two people standing on top of each other would touch the airplane.
Touch the airplane coming across, and the ship is moving. You're refueling in the middle of the air, and
Right.
like how long do you have to get that done?
Well, so it'll take you'll be in the basket for about 3 minutes.
3 minutes.
5 minutes.
So let's get this straight, right? You got a plane in front of you that's carrying thousands of gallons of fuel,
Right.
and it's downloading this to you.
Yeah, the hose comes down. The probe is on the F-18. It's to the right of the nose.
To the right, see, he knows that.
It always comes up the same side. So it comes out the right side, and then you just have to fly it into the basket very slowly because it's aluminum and it's not that strong. But you get it, and then the basket turns, locks onto that probe, and then they just start pumping fuel across.
Right. I mean, just think about like how incredible that is. Like what a technology, and that's been going on for 40 years.
Yeah.
What does very slowly mean?
How
fast are you going?
Closing speed.
Closing speed no more than 2 to 3 knots.
So 5, 6
about
kilometers.
5 kilometers an hour.
And how does that
So
go?
different.
And
You're calculating that.
while you're flying at what speed?
You're flying about 250 nautical miles, so about 330, 350 nautical miles per
miles an hour.
And the margins around 5
5
kilometers. And you do it all visually, right? You can see how it's just like it's kind of like driving a car next to another car on the freeway. You can see how close you're approaching. So you just have to do it gently, because if you hit it too hard, it'll rip the probe off the F-18, and it's so you don't want to do that. It's very embarrassing actually, because then everyone knows. Your reputation is very important.
Let's say on that height, you have sometimes some wind coming by and the plane is going up and down,
Turbulence.
right, left. What is the margin of mistake?
Well, I mean, the basket, I don't know, it's like roughly this big. So that's your margin. You got to get it into that, and it'll kind of guide it.
After you were connected,
You
know that that's a wire. How?
A hose.
Yeah, you got to keep the nose of the airplane roughly in probably
So you can't relax, is what you're saying.
Yeah, no,
You're not like,
it's-
you're like, I'm gonna have a Milka
yeah.
and a Coke.
You can't engage
text
you, you
somebody.
cannot engage you on a pilot. You can do it all by hand.
Right.
So it's like probably a meter radius. You got to keep the nose of the airplane so it stays engaged to the basket.
So just think about it, like the level of concentration that we're talking about, right? So this is after all that training where you started out just flying trainer planes, then you graduated to jets and then F-18s and then carrier, and now you're in combat basically. You're going out to support people who are on the ground, who are getting shot at, or who could get shot at, or other things obviously, and you're there to support them. And yet, even when you're just going to refuel your plane, you've got to concentrate. So think about how long that is. And then you're over the mission area for 6.5 hours.
Yeah, so those missions we would tank, support for maybe an hour and a half, get gas, come back, tank again, support for an hour and a half or so, come back, get gas, and then fly away back to the ship. And I tell people, the difference between day carrier lanes and night carrier lanes. So now it's generally night. You've been basically working for 6 hours in the airplane, you were 6.5, you've been up for a while, and you come back, and now you've got to get your game back, like, totally. And
But in some of those missions, though, you've got guys on the ground that are communicating with you, and you're hearing them inside your helmet, and stuff sometimes is going on.
yeah, so
They're getting shot at,
Yeah, when you support,
and some of them are getting hit,
yeah,
hurt.
yeah.
So tell us a little bit about that.
So that's what we were there to do, support the coalition forces that were on the ground. And so when you would go support them, you would check in on the radio frequency with them, and then you would listen and talk to them, and they would talk about what they're doing and what you're there, and they know what you're there to do to support them. And we have sensors, like sensors that can see things from altitude down the ground.
How high in the air are you? 8 kilometers? 5 kilometers up?
I know we're not that high, so you're operating at probably 4,000 to 5,000 meters.
Oh, so 45 K.
Yeah, so we don't talk about it. It's kilometers, yeah.
So roughly 45 kilometers.
Yeah, 45 kilometers, and then
It's 15,000 feet.
15,000, yeah, about 15,000 feet. So and you circle and support them, and if they get in trouble or they're getting shot at, there's rules of engagement when you can employ ordnance and support
Deploy
them.
ordnance means drop bombs.
Drop bombs, or you can straight and support them, and you just
Straight
follow-
means you can shoot your machine gun.
Yeah, shoot in the nose of the F-18. There's like a cannon that you can shoot as well, and so we would just wait. You support them, and
So compared to the beer cans or a Coke can, how big is the
about twice as
bullet?
big as that Coke can.
It's twice as big as the Coke can. So it's about the size of the beer can over
Yeah,
there.
about the size of the beer can.
And you're shooting how many of those?
The
Per second?
It'll shoot 100 per second.
So the 100 of those green beer cans, roughly, per second is coming out of a gun.
Right.
And how fast is it going?
They travel about 2,500 feet per second.
So 800 meters per second.
800 meters per second.
So you got 100 beer cans in a second flying out of a machine gun on a plane that's $50 million minimum used, that you've trained hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of hours to use, that you then have to go back and land on a floating city, basically.
That's right.
That's only 20 meters wide.
Yeah, about 20, 30 meters wide.
But that's like a landing area, and then you've got 15 meters that you've got to land it on. After all that stress, after listening to guys in the radio in your helmet, guys that are getting shot at, hit, and communicating with different nationalities.
Right.
Guys on the ground, they might be British, they might be French, they might be something else.
Italian,
Italians,
or US forms.
or US, right?
Yeah.
Canadian.
Yeah.
And then you're leading not only your squadron, but then you're leading others, right?
Right. So you go up there. You might be a mission commander. You might have 4, 8, 12 airplanes that you're working with and coordinating.
Different nationalities,
Generally, those are generally from the same airline. So from the same.
usually.
Usually, it would be all American forward aircraft.
Did you have any situations where there were Canadians or French or
Or you
anything
would
else?
turn over. Sometimes we would fly together. We turn over with British, and there were the other nationalities had aircraft there as well. So you had Brits and French were there as well. So you might. Not Afghanistan. So we would, yeah. So that's what we did.
Wow.
It's good.
Amazing.
So come back and
So then you have to come back at night after doing all this stuff,
yeah.
and you gotta land on a ship. And then what happens when so you're coming in, it's 3 degrees, you're flying at 220 kilometers an hour, and you've got to hit a space that's not very big.
It's not very big, yeah.
Yeah.
So
That's kind of like being able to kick a ball into a soccer net from halfway with the lights off,
yeah.
with one shot.
And then only the goalposts lit up.
Yeah, you can only see the goalposts.
Yeah. So, I mean, and that's really what it is you just come down and follow your instruments. At night it can be, well, the easiest way is, it's hard to describe what you have to do without, if I had a picture I could show you, but what the feeling is, in the daytime, once you've done it quite a few times, it becomes kind of like a sport. It's kind of fun, not fun, but it's like, you can tell,
Yeah.
you're like, I'm really going to do this really well.
Right.
At night, the last time I landed at night felt the exact same way I felt the first time, which was scared shitless. So, and
Do you guys need to translate that?
really,
really scared.
it's not good.
Not good.
I earned this gray hair. I tell people, I earned it the hard way. But I've had landings at night that were so challenging. When you caught the wire, stop. My feet were shaking, and I couldn't control them. Like they're just bouncing off the floor.
And how many of you guys have had that experience when deciding what widget to code should I code? Like, are your legs shaking? You had that experience recently of figuring out why is it not decaching?
So it's good. So that's fun.
But that's the kind of the equivalent, right? In the coding world, like we have we have 5 guys, and we'd like to add some girls, so if you know anybody who wants to come and vote. We have 5 guys that work here in an office, just not far away from here, 20-minute walk from here. Right near Drizzt stores, so if you're into kebabs, it's kind of nice. Well, I don't know if it's nice, but apparently it is. The other night we were delivering a final product demo for L'Oreal, which is like this. Everybody's heard of L'Oreal. It's a $95 billion company. It's our first customer, and this is a challenge that we were facing. Was like, I know it sounds really small by comparison, but the parallel that I want to draw here is that if you don't know exactly what you're doing, you're going to run into trouble. And that was really a test for us as an organization. And it's like, once we pass that test, I mean, I should be handing out a badge, I think, to, I don't know why I keep doing this.
Maybe I can stop that from happening.
But basically, it's the same thing. You're trying to build a great company that may compete with a Facebook or a Google in certain areas, and that's really the training and the confidence that you have to have in your ability to solve problems quickly, but also, I would say, I don't know if it's not really comparable in terms of a life or death situation, obviously, but what is comparable is that if you don't get that right, and you don't deliver that line of code, or you don't decache, and you don't find that file that needs to be deleted, or whatever it is, you've got a customer who is paying you. That's kind of life or death for your company, right? If that customer basically decides, you know what, I don't know about this startup. Like, why don't we just go and work with a much more established company that isn't a startup? Established companies, like a few days before that, Amazon had an issue with their S3 service, and half the internet basically broke, right? You couldn't upload files to lots and lots and lots of services that depend on that, on Amazon Web Services. So it also happens with extremely well-established multi-billion-dollar companies. But there is, whether you're flying a trainer or you're flying a $50 million jet and you're landing at night, the point is that whatever it is that you're doing, if you're not actually fully committed to it, you're going to make mistakes. Right. And that's really when I remember I said elite, the concept of elite in whatever it is that you do. I know they're sitting here in the front row, and you're training to be a dentist. What happens when you've got somebody who's paying you money to make their smile prettier, or fix a problem because they've always had pain, they can't even eat an apple, and you're putting in an implant, and you drilled a screw into a bone inside their mouth, and you're putting in a tooth. And, if you haven't done all that preparation and that training right,
You could paralyze him.
You could, so
that's
it's not that they have a bad smile.
Yeah.
You can actually cut a nerve,
Yeah.
and paralyze somebody.
And you can't fix it. There's no way back. That's the problem.
So, the concept of elite, whatever it is that you do, if you really truly want to be at the top of your profession, you have to truly fully understand how to do it, why it's important to do it, why it's important to do it right. And I think this is actually a pretty good segue into the next slide. I know, Valentin, you had a question, but I want Chris to basically talk a little bit about this slide here.
Yeah.
And why it's important.
So this is a picture of my wife and daughters from 3.5 years ago. It was right after my last flight. So this is July 26th of 2013, and I came back, and then tradition is your last flight, you get hosed down with water, and all this crazy stuff happens, and so I'm all wet here, you can't tell, and then took the picture. But I use this picture also when I talk about risk and safety, because we spend a lot of time talking about risk and safety in risk in banking and safety in aviation. But you need the importance of training and being your best, and the amount of work and dedication required is really important. And what I always felt about is once you're always an instructor. Once you become more senior in the squadrons, obviously had the opportunity to go to Top Gun, and so to learn what that meant and to wear that patch, and what that patch meant, that you were always going to set the example, you were always going to know what you were talking about and not, not sound like an idiot, was really important. And then how that, would transcend through the squadron, the culture that you would impart upon everyone that you worked with. And then in the end, I wanted to come home every night, and I wanted to ensure that the people in my squadron came home every night, and that they taught people that they didn't crash airplanes and were able to do everything. So that's, and then if you were in Afghanistan or wherever you might be, if you ever called upon to do what we were trained to do, you did it well. Because the people on the ground were depending on you to do that, because it might be very important for the time. So, that's what being elite kind of means to me. And I'll talk a little bit about what it takes, I think, to get there. But it's important. And when I talk to folks, this is this idea to me of you need to go all in. And if you're going to be the best, it's hard, it's a journey, and you need to go all in. And so here's a picture of taken to cut a screenshot off of a GoPro flying. It's a little bit what the cockpit looks like inside an F-18. And not on purpose, but here you can see the Top Gun patch there. And so that in naval aviation, so the Navy and the Marine Corps, that is essentially the last stepping stone. It's the most elite, essentially, you can be, and be an F-18 pilot. So that is a visual demonstration of what it is. And then to get there, there are no easy paths. There's no, and it doesn't come easy. And you have to put the time and the effort into it and be dedicated. I talk about, Paul and I were kind of catching up the last couple of days, which has been fantastic. And so I had done this for 20, so I took my transition to banking and how important it was to me to do that and how hard it was. So I'm in San Diego, I fly that flight and take the picture that you saw. On August 12th, which is about 2.5 weeks later, I started banking in London. Had no place to live. I had a bunch of friends there for the MBA program. And my family wasn't going to move to the Christmas, New Year's holiday because it was just everything happened too fast, and so they were going to stay in San Diego. And I slept on an air mattress in a good friend's attic. I was 40 years old. I was 42 years old. Obviously, I was making decent money, but I'm like, but I needed the time to learn banking. And so I said, I'm going to be here for 4 months on my own and work long weeks, long hours, and and was saving money for the future, and said, I'm going to sleep on this air mattress for 4 months.
Yeah.
It was kind of cool, but a startup experience is not different than that.
Right.
And you have to make sacrifices, put the time in, and go down the hard journey, because at the end of it is where you win. And yeah, so it's great. But it was anyway. So that's the inside of F-18. Flying. One more slide.
Yeah.
Any questions?
Yeah,
Valentine had a question.
How long did it take you since your civilian days, since you joined the Navy, until you first flown the F-18, and how did that first flight feel?
Yeah. So the question was, how long did it take from the moment you joined the Marines?
Yeah.
Sorry, but it is
important.
It's a division inside the Navy.
But still, how long did it take between that when you joined and then your first F-18 flight? How did that feel?
So when I joined the Marines, I did 6 months of infantry training. So every Marine officer spent 6 months doing infantry training.
You got to understand, it's the same word in Romanian, right?
And then from the time, so about 2.5 years from the time I started flight school till I started flying the F-18, roughly. To get through all the training pipeline, get selected and go, it was about 2.5 years. So it's quite a process to get there. A lot of time and cost. Yeah.
And how did it feel?
Oh, it's good. Let's see.
You got to be.
It's amazing, but it's pretty cool, right? You sit there on the runway, you put both engines in full afterburner, and away you go. And that's two things. I'll tell you about taking off. It's exciting. It goes really fast. It's like it's like driving, it takes off about as fast as, like a sports car takes off. That's about how fast you can take off. It's not like you just magically get going to 300 kilometers an hour. It's not that fast, but it's pretty good. However, when you take off a carrier, you get launched off the front, 185 feet, and you go from 0 to probably high 200
So
kilometers.
60 meters.
60 meters, and you go about 160 to 180 knots,
So
not
you're
much.
talking 260,
260 kilometers an hour.
In
1.8 seconds.
1.8 seconds, from 0 to 260.
And then you get launched off the front, and you go flying. So that's very exciting.
And that's because of the catapult.
That's
That's
because you're pulled off the front.
it's just like a slingshot.
Yeah, so it's
Incredible.
good. It's very good.
Amazing technology.
It is.
And there's one more slide.
One more slide. So, and this is, Paul kind of hit on this. I use this slide in a safety presentation, but you can be very well trained, and it can still go wrong. And I just highlight this. It's in our business, it's generally due to human factors. 70 to 80% of all aircraft accidents are caused, but they're caused by pilots or human error, possibly with maintenance. And that was the case here. But I just, this pilot here in the top left, through a sequence of events, which we really won't get into here, but his F-18 landed on the house, and that's kind of what's left of it at the top right. And this man in the bottom right, his wife and 2 children were killed, as well as his mother-in-law. So this is the importance of, you have to be good all the time. And if you're really going to be great, you can't have mistakes. And so we have a lot of things in place to keep this from happening. But even with the best teams and the best people, things still happen.
Yeah, spelling errors, takedowns.
Some guy shows up in the
causing hundreds of millions, if not billions of dollars in lost revenue, things that don't work.
That's right. And so, in a reputation, a company's reputation, a startup's reputation is very precious, because you might not get a second opportunity. And so while you can be amazing, small errors, especially in the startup phase, can cause your reputation to go, Amazon's going to survive your service.
They'll be fine.
They'll be fine.
Nobody's going to cancel.
L'Oreal going down for a couple of days is not going to be fine.
No,
So it makes just a difference, but it can't happen. And then how you prepare for that, and then how you move on is key. Yeah,
Absolutely.
and you have to be careful. One more. I think we'll talk about that tomorrow. So what I did.
Should we just ask if there's any
Yeah,
questions?
any questions and come back.
Any questions on the, specifically on the military experience, the Top Gun experience? Anybody? Yep.
How many G's is that from 0 to 240?
It's
1.8 seconds.
yeah, so it's probably like 2 to 3 lateral G's right down.
So that's like 3 people who weigh as much as you sitting on top.
Yeah, sitting on top, you whip down the catapult stroke. The airplane will pull the Z-axis, like when you're pulling G's.
The Z-axis, the Z-axis.
Z.
You get obviously X, Y, and then.
And the Z-axis.
Yeah.
So when you're pulling G's, the G's go down, like through your head down. It's designed for 7.5 G's. Which is good. So, if you weigh 200, if you weigh 80 kilos, it's like weighing 560 kilos, is what you feel like. Which is good. You get better doing it than pulling it.
And you have to breathe in a certain way,
Yeah,
right? To
breathe,
force
yes.
to keep the blood in your brain. Otherwise, if it drains too much blood out of your brain, you run out of oxygen, you just gas up.
That's right. So you're trained to do these. I won't embarrass myself by showing you. But you are trained to do these kind of. I won't even embarrass myself.
Basically, you're forcing.
You're forcing you to squeeze your muscles together. So one of the things Paul put on is, we call them G-suits, but they're like trousers that you put on your legs.
Yeah, it feels like you're trying on trousers from when you were 10.
Yeah, like they're little tight hand air bladders.
I don't know if you've ever done that. If you haven't, it's okay.
It's like putting on a pair of skinny jeans, and you plug it into the airplane, and when you pull G's, the air bladders fill with air, and they squeeze your legs. And it's to keep the blood in your thorax, in this part of your body, and keep the blood pressure high in your brain, high enough, so you don't pass out. Because if you pass out, obviously that's really bad, and you may not.
But then there's the opposite, which is rarely talked about, which is red out, right? When you're pushing down.
You can push over, and then actually too much blood will go into.
And it's kind of, isn't it sort of like you can only take a couple of G's.
Yeah, you can only do 2 or 3 G's negative.
Negative G's.
It's very accurate.
So in Top Gun, he talks about like doing
Yeah,
this
that's
thing.
totally-
So tell us a little bit about that. Are you guys familiar with Top Gun, the movie? When he takes the photograph of the guy by flying down on top of him?
Totally fake.
Totally fake. Not possible.
Not possible.
And they're taking off their masks to talk.
They are. Well, that's so the cameras can see the
That's so
place.
the cameras can see the place, but you can't do that.
Well, you can.
But at lower altitudes, right?
Yeah, lower
Or
altitudes.
does it matter?
It doesn't, well, the cabin is pressurized to a certain altitude, so you can
Take it off,
generally,
but they generally don't.
generally it.
Could you play music?
No music,
No?
no volleyball, no music, no t-shirts.
Do some text.
You see why we're, like, it would have been impossible to do the movie. Stop it when it's
No call signs like Maverick or Goose, because those are too cool.
They're too cool. So, but this is in the Marines though, right? Some branches of the military have kind of Viper and Raptor.
In the Navy and the Marine Corps especially, you earn your call sign for whatever reason, and they're generally not glamorous.
So yours is Whiz.
Mine's Whiz.
Tell us a little bit about, you guys familiar with call signs? Hey, my call sign Viper, call sign Justin. What yours is Whiz, tell us a little bit about that.
So mine's Whiz. I got it.
It's actually pretty cool.
Yeah, it's pretty common, but it's, I don't know if you've seen a circular slide rule. So you can imagine like there's slide rules that were used long before computers, and there's circular ones, and you can do quick math on it relatively accurately. They're used a lot in aviation, much more in the past before a lot of jets were computerized. But you look training to
Is there any translation for a circular slide rule?
I have no idea.
And I'm trying to, if you know what a slide rule, I think it's when it's a circle and you spin them, and there's 2 pieces, and there's different numbers, and when you can do quick math on it. And it's called a whiz wheel, because it's circular, it looks like a wheel. And you're taught how to use them. No one uses them after you're taught the first time, because the jet does what you need, or you use a calculator. I kept mine, and it was in my bag that you would take to the airplane. A few years passed, a couple years passed, not paying attention, leave my bag, some of the other pilots found it, and in whose bag it was, they dig through it, and they find this whiz wheel in there, and they're like, so I get my bag back. I don't know that they kept it. And then we have a ceremony where you get your first call sign. And they came up and then they presented me back my whiz wheel on a big lanyard, they put it around my neck, and then that was my call sign. It was kind of funny. There was much alcohol involved as well. But yeah.
Awesome.
You got lucky.
Yeah, I got lucky. It could have been much worse.
Give us an example of like a really funny call sign that's not glamorous.
It's a mixed crowd. Again, there's some that are,
Okay, the PG version.
yeah,
Some might watch it though.
yeah, I know. That's true. They might be watching. Sure. I'm trying to think of a good, so I have a good friend, a very good friend. His call sign is Casper. So there's an American movie about Casper the Ghost. So that's made familiar. But why would a fighter pilot want to be called Casper the Ghost? Because that's kind of crazy. But he got his call sign because he was on a ship, on a carrier, got super, super sick. And you can just imagine, you get really sick, and he's very pale skinned. And he got so sick, and his skin got so pale, like you could see his veins going through his skin. So the guys were like, dude, you look like Casper the Ghost, you're so white. So I became Casper, so fine, but not, he's a good guy.
Awesome. So as really interesting in like this entire new world that most of us have never even touched or seen. You go into banking, and obviously Barclays was the first bank that you worked for, and then you went to work for Atlas Mara, which is where you currently are. So give us a little bit of an overview about, well, this is a whole new element, obviously, to your career. Tell us a little bit about the decision process, and then what happens there.
Yeah, sure. So after I was asked to join Atlas Mara, and so I'll just try to do this in like 2 minutes, because I want to for Paul and the team to talk about what they're doing. So Atlas Mara was co-founded by Bob Diamond and Ashish Thakur. Ashish is a Ugandan, and Bob an American. And the kind of overall premise is to go into Africa, sub-Saharan Africa, buy banks in markets where there are basically too many banks. We also see the European and American banks retrenching from Africa due to capital requirements, due to regulatory reasons.
Retrenching meaning pulling out.
Pulling out of Africa because of the capital requirements and regulatory requirements.
So that basically means that they're overexposed.
Well, they're overexposed, or they want to be less exposed.
They want to be less exposed.
They said because of the new.
So you now have to have a certain amount of money on hand, and as a ratio
That's right.
of the total amount of money that you deal with.
Yeah. So the risk-weighted assets, which are the whole. So where we are right now, our business models we buy.
Coding equivalent of that is like, or the tech equivalent of that is like running your own servers. Like how many of the servers are your own, and how many of the servers are in the cloud. And it's a ratio. Like you have to be able to run a certain amount. If the cloud goes down, you can still provide service.
So I'll just talk about how we started. Here's our vision. We want to be the premier financial institution in sub-Saharan Africa. We want to be in the top 3 to 5 or achieve a tier 1 position, which basically means be one of the big banks in the market and be disruptive. These are some performance targets for the medium term. Our business model is buy banks, protect them / fix them, and then grow. So that's, we try to keep it very simple. So we buy, protect, grow. And then this is how, as a startup, we were founded. So we are listed on the London Stock Exchange. Bob Diamond and Ashish, we started as a SPAC, a special purpose acquisition company. So they basically listed, or they put forward a prospectus, and they went right to an IPO.
Basically, it's like they raised almost like a seed round on the basis of a presentation.
That's right.
Just 600 and...
Yeah, we raised $625 million.
So it's a little bit more than what we raised.
Yeah, so we actually started with cash before we had revenues. And so we did the first rounds, and then we had our first acquisitions. And now we own or control banks in 6 countries, and then we have a major investment in Nigeria. We're the largest single shareholder of a bank in Nigeria, called UBN, and that's us. And so now, buy more banks, fix the ones we have, and then create economies of scale, grow revenue. That's basically what we do.
So your company's based in Dubai.
Yep. So
you no longer fly the planes, but you spend a lot of time on
We
them.
spend a lot of time in planes.
Yeah.
So we're listed on the London. Hotel for a few days and go back out. My family stayed in London because of the amount of work required to get this startup. We talked about the dedication required to do this. It was easier to leave my wife and children in London and then just get it done on the road in Africa. So that's me, Atlas Farm, and no pitch required by the shares. That's where we are right now. So, thank you. Any questions on Atlas Farm?
Anybody interested in that? Go ahead.
How exactly do you seek to protect and grow the banks?
Sure.
Why exactly is there reasons to do that?
So protecting them, and this is some things people that we want to protect them by mostly around process improvement, around compliance and governance. We do a lot of work on tech. So a bank, in very simple terms, a bank is a technology company that moves money around because it all happens with computers and servers and tech. So on the protect side, it's to get all that cleaned up, a lot of processes, and there's a lot of how money moves, accounts, different banks, reconciliations is challenging. And if your tech isn't great, it's even more challenging. And you want to minimize the number of manual processes so that we call it straight-through processing. So it just happens all in the software and in the tech. So that's what we do on the protect. Growing, we know how banking's going. Banking's going digital. So what we have done is look to make sure the bank is basically clean and is ready for growth, and then to bring in digital products. And that's around bringing in, there's a lot of fintech companies, different way to do payments, different way to do loans, and you bring that together. We want to bring that to the bank. And grow. Not only a bank normally grows through bringing in more deposits and lending more money, home mortgages, car loans, personal loans. The other way is we want to do that. We also want to do it on a digital front as well. So some of the ideas, what we work through is you buy electricity, prepaid electricity in some countries. So you want to buy €5 worth of electricity because that'll last you a week. We'll actually lend you the €5 so that you can buy the electricity and you pay us back over the week. So we call them nano loans, very small loans. You just do a lot of them very fast. So that's and that's all done digitally. We work with a company that is providing us, like credit scoring. I don't know if that in Romania if there's credit scoring, but you have credit scoring that is done. Traditionally, it would be done with like Equifax and these big organizations. We're working with companies that, based on how you use your mobile phone, it'll give you a credit score. So you have our mobile banking app on your phone, you download another app, and you give it permission to look through how often you charge your phone, how often you let it die, how often you top up airtime, how many friends you have on Facebook, these kind of things, and it'll develop a credit score. Fascinating, remarkably accurate. And then we make lending decisions based off that. But the benefit of this is no paper, seamless, and the marginal cost of doing one more loan is almost zero because it's just all happens, with the tech and the software behind it. So that's some of the ideas of growing in the digital side. Of course, acquisitions are important as well. For Alismar as a whole, we want to move into, we talk about trying to get into 10 to 15 countries. So we got about 5 more banks to do that.
Are the banks staying national, so to say, or are they becoming part of Atlas now? Because they're not, let's say, depending on the country.
Other than the regulatory requirements of a bank being supported by its own country, they're all like privatized private banks. If you use that term, they're not partially government subsidized or a partially government bank. So they're all, yeah.
Question on KYC. So you said basically when you vet your customers, do you use their mobile numbers as ID, or how do you?
So for KYC, this is really around just a decision of whether to lend to them or not.
Okay.
Each country has established what its KYC is, know your customer. So, like you have to bring a passport to open up a bank account, those kind of ideas. So,
but in Africa, I know the situation is that most nationals don't actually have proper
That's right.
IDs, and
That's right.
how do you get around that?
Well, you have to comply with what each country requires.
Okay.
With some of the small products, you can imagine like you have to comply with the KYC requirements that exist, but there's like KYC Lite, where if you're only doing mobile banking or small amounts, or say prepaid cards, you only need this level of ID or documentation. So it does depend. Obviously, when countries have a national identity card or national identity type system, it's helpful to have that. Otherwise, because you can't. This is interesting. I think what you're going to see is we know that there's telecoms, MNOs, mobile network operators. There's banks. Yeah, they're competitors to banks, right? So you have mobile network operators. So the most famous one in Africa is M-Pesa. So you have M-Pesa, but imagine that you got bank, and then you have fintech companies. And it's going to mix in the middle.
Fintech's financial technology.
Financial technology. So PayPal sort of is a fintech company. It'll come together in the middle because an MNO doesn't want to have to do KYC because it wants to have millions of customers.
They already do, though.
Well,
Because when you sign up for a mobile number, basically they use their mobile number as an ID form.
as a form of ID, but in that country, is that enough then in turn to have a bank account?
Okay.
It most likely is not. I can almost guarantee it's not. So, an MNO in Mozambique might have 4 million customers. The bank has 200,000 because of this difference. And so you're going to see this coming together. MNOs don't want to be banks, and they don't want to be regulated like a bank. Banks want more customers, and we want, and so it's going to kind of meet in the middle is what we'll see. What I anticipate we'll see.
Do you also develop like low-end tech? So for mobile phones that are not smartphones.
That's right.
They
So
also
we-
develop on that front.
So, in fact, we're probably better at USSD-based mobile application versus a smartphone
Okay.
as well. I'm not the smartest guy in that, but I know we do like the texting portion, and that works quite well. And I find it fascinating. Like, I've traveled all over Africa. I've never not had at least 3G level service. It's everywhere. The question, the data phones are important though, because data phones are expensive in a lot of these countries. So there will be non-smartphones, but there's coverage. So the USSD is an important aspect of that for us.
What's the name of the credit scoring service?
Lendo. Yeah, it's the firm we work with. That's it. Good.
Where's the
I'll be
tech
around.
team?
What's that?
Where's the tech team?
It was a very good question. I should brought that up. So, not in Dubai. Our tech teams are, there's teams in each country, and then we have a lot of work that's done in Johannesburg.
So if a Romanian startup, for example, if anybody in this room was looking for an opportunity to provide services to banks in Africa or other banks that are looking to do business in Africa, so from a tech perspective, what kind of opportunities do you see that where you think tech can solve a problem that's currently not being solved or maybe not being solved efficiently?
That's good.
So if there were a startup here, somebody working or interested in a fintech or working for a fintech, what would you do? What kind of opportunity do you see?
So I think the opportunity is kind of maybe Nigerians, but they're working in London. They want to send money back, and they don't want to use Western Union because Western Union charges so much money. Or very hard, high fees. We see a lot of work in that space. Anything to make banking simpler and cheaper. Because what we want to do is bring more Africans into the banking system, because it's important for the economy, because economies grow when money can be lent, because you need capital, even small amounts of capital, to grow businesses. And that's how these countries, the economies will grow. So anything that can be done to make that simpler and cheaper is key. And then find an M&O or find a bank to partner with. Because I know it'll be very challenging for a fintech company to do it on its own. It's partnering with an M&O or with a bank and bringing that service that you design or product and bring it to market.
So basically, it's one of the interesting things you have in this country is you can go to these kiosks, these little sort of standalone things in supermarkets and malls. You can pay your bills, you can do all kinds of interesting things. So perhaps something that some of you more adventurous people or friends of yours might want to do is actually look at what you currently have here, who's providing that, and maybe take a trip, like head up to Nigeria or a bigger, one of the bigger markets, a Kenya or something like that, and have a look and see what they're doing and how they're paying stuff. And if there's technology that's being used there that can be used here, and you can build that, you're like, wow, they have this really cool solution. If we had that at home, this would be great, and vice versa. Like, what are the things that are being done here today? Who are the companies that are building those, and why aren't they present in these markets where these things just don't exist? And they could hit those objectives, making it cheaper, making it bringing more people into the business.
And I would encourage you to go there, because what I see a lot of is London, German-based fintech companies, and then we're like, I love the idea, but come sit in Maputo, Mozambique with me, walk down the street, and look around, and now tell me if it's going to work or not. That's the reality of where we operate. So you need to, it's very helpful, because a lot of these ideas would work amazing, in Europe or in the U.S. But when you go to places where the power's not always on, you don't always have data, all those things, it's really key. No, I've talked enough probably.
No, it's great.
I'll be here afterwards, so if you have questions.
Yeah, any questions? Any more questions?
I have another one.
Shoot.
Any plans regarding blockchain technology or Bitcoin?
Yes, there's obviously a lot of talk about Bitcoin and blockchain technology. I would say generally we're not right now, pursuing those opportunities because our banks are relatively simple right now, retail and corporate banks. But it's fascinating, right? So you think, imagine an entire continent, 50-some countries, and currency. That would be, that's essentially what it becomes. The movement of money, the speed at which you move money is phenomenal. Great ideas. we'll see how first. But definitely, fascinating stuff.
How many people are not connected to the internet in Africa? Also, in those countries where you have
Mobile phone, I have a slide that they put in here. Mobile phone penetration, I believe, is like 70%. Smartphones is like 20 or 30%, I think. And I would say, if you want to do fintech or for financial services in Africa, don't even worry about doing it on the desktop. The only thing it meant, it's got to work on the phone. Because the amount of people who access the internet via laptop or a computer in Africa is like 10%. 90% is on your phone. So it's almost like you just go right to the phone, right to the mobile app. That's what we need. Internet, like just regular internet banking is not that big for us. It is for corporates, but not for individuals. It has to be on your phone. It must always work on your phone. So, that's a good point. Oh.
Awesome. Well, thank you. I mean, we covered a ton of things. I think we probably have, tell me organizers how much more time we have. Roughly 10 minutes, 15 minutes, most. So I know it's a special edition, and we're very proud as a company to sponsor this special edition. So I encourage you to take pizza home, maybe a beer. I want to talk a little bit about what we're doing and the opportunities at our company, because it's pretty exciting. And the whole team, the whole Bucharest Romanian team is here. So the only person that works for Findy at the moment who's not here is Jim, who's based in the UK. But I just want to talk a little bit about what we do, and maybe talk from what you've seen. You've seen some of our fighter pilots at work, and what your impressions are. And basically, so we started out as a company that where the name comes from is Find Indie, which is find independent films or indie films. So we started off as a portal for delivering independent content. We pivoted, which is a great word in the startup world, but basically pivoted as a result of customer demand. So we got contacted by some corporations basically saying, hey, we really love how your product looks and feels and works. Would you be interested in doing that for us? So one of the customers who we're working with is L'Oreal, and this is just a sample of some screen grabs from the tool that we built, the platform that we built that L'Oreal uses. So we actually have what's called a white label platform, meaning it can be purposed for anything. This is currently what it looks like if you go onto the L'Oreal site, which is called welove.makeup. It's live, so L'Oreal is our first customer. We currently have 5 other customers in development. But we didn't do anything with those customers until L'Oreal was live. Now we're working with them, and we're excited about the opportunity that this represents, especially for a startup that, like I've said before, is mostly based here in Bucharest. So I'll ask Radu to elaborate a little bit on the positions that we're currently recruiting for. But basically, we're looking for people that are really passionate about delivering an awesome front end. So if you know somebody, sorry?
JavaScript people.
JavaScript people.
Sysadmins and some mobile dev.
JavaScript people, systems administrators, and mobile dev. So think about your networks. Think about who's currently working in a big company here, or who's finishing university and who would like to go and work for a startup. Just to give you an idea, when this startup was founded just over 2 years ago, so January, was when it was incorporated. The company incorporated, and based on the strength of basically our prospectus, which is kind of like how your bank started, we were valued by investors at $1.5 million. And that was really just a combination of what we'd already built in terms of proofs of concept, a catalog of movies and videos that we put together. And basically what I was able to convince people was a reasonable price, essentially to invest in the company. So that in a little over 2 years, we've grown from being
$1.5 million company to a $5 million company, and that's based on our current share price. So it's not like this fictitious kind of funny thing when you hear about valuations. How do you get to that? Well, you multiply the number of shares outstanding by the price that we're able to sell shares at, and that gives our company a value. So it's currently $3.91 a share is our current share price. So we are, like I said, we're valued at $5 million today, and what that allows us to do is it allows us to raise money. So we are raising a small amount of capital now. We've raised just under $700,000 to date, and we'll be, when you include my money that I put into the company, it's more like $900,000. So we're a little short of $1 million in overall, but we're going to be moving later this year. We plan to do 2, 3, and now we're talking about possibly a $4 million seed round, so which would be really exciting. And the size of that round actually depends, I'm talking with some venture capital firms in London and New York, the size of that round really depends on the success that we're able to deliver for our customers. The one big customer that we have right now, which you see on the screen, and then also some smaller customers that we're dealing with. I say smaller in terms of the size of the companies, but in their respective areas, these are really great brands to have on board. So if you know, I'm going to be very straightforward about it. If you know people that, or you yourselves, or you know people that are really interested in coming to work for a company that today is worth $5 million, we do have equity available. So everybody who joins the company, everybody here has an equity allocation assigned to them in our internal books. Basically, we assign shares to each of our people who work here. Today's worth $5 million. We expect that a year from now we're going to actually grow by 2.5 times that valuation. So we fully expect to be raising money at around a $12.5 million valuation, or at least to be valued at that a year from now. So think about that in terms of where you currently are and where your friends are, and that alone shouldn't really drive you to join the company. Oh, I better join now. I get the shares at this price because it's going to double in value, triple in value. That shouldn't drive you alone. But what it is an indicator of investor confidence. You're dealing with a company that's publicly traded, but essentially it's the same thing in privately. This is obviously privately held company, IPO. We're not on a penny stock market or anything like that. So I just wanted to get that word out there because we do believe we're fully invested here. We're actually moving to a bigger office in about 6 weeks' time. It's great. We actually have some control over the inputs into that, what it's going to look like. And, it's a triplex in the in-city area, in the in-city buildings. We're going to have a top 3 floors of one of the buildings there, so a really nice premium space to work with a great view. A games room, and a bedroom to chill out and sleep in with some. And I know some people on the team will really appreciate having that. But really more than that, it's the opportunity to work with a company that is frontline service. So we're not a B2B that then some widget that somebody plugs into something that then goes and powers something else that then powers something else. We're actually directly B2B to C. So we see the actual end users of our customers. Right? We see what they do. We control their experience. So big brands are essentially paying us. They're deferring to us. They're giving us the responsibility. They say, you guys provide a best in market experience. That's the term that's been used. We trust you to provide our end users with the best experience. And one of the enterprise customers we're dealing with right now is talking about 4 million of those users this year, and they want to grow to 25 million users within the next 18 months. So you have an opportunity to work for a company that is just with one customer is whatever line of code, whatever widget you create, whatever drop-down menu you've done. Paul is here in the front row. Put your hand up, Paul. He's designed a product that is he's the principal designer in our company. Most of what you see on the screen has been done by him in terms of design, and it's really important to understand that you do something like that, you create a widget, you make a button, you do something, that's going to be used by millions of people this year, tens of millions of people within the next 18 months, and possibly hundreds of millions. So that's really an opportunity to have a direct impact on people in a way that you're probably not going to get from a lot of other tech companies here that tend to be more back office, a bit more, I don't mean back office in terms of like back end infrastructure. I'm talking about like, you do this system which allows our accountants to do this. Okay. It can be exciting for people that are really, love accounting, but it's not as exciting as far as we're concerned. It's not as exciting as delivering mobile digital video down to end users around the world. So, so a little bit about how it works. Like I said, I'll send a link because I don't think that's really we're going to have time to address that. I want to show you what's called the serviceable attainable market. If you ever go to sort of one of these incubators, accelerators sort of programs, Tech Hub has a pretty good one in terms of like getting your startup ready. You'll talk about the TAM SAM song, and that is how big is the market? Total market, $250 billion per year is what the digital advertising market is going to be by 2020. And then you get down within that, you get to what's called the serviceable accessible. So digital video hosting, delivery, and promotion. And then you get the serviceable obtainable market by 2020 of being a $40 billion market. So it's growing today. So if you just look at it in today's terms, it's smaller. But by 2020, we expect it to be a $40 billion market. And it's essentially one venture capitalist said to me, he said, you know what it's like? It's like you're looking at a river full of gold, and you're able to stick a finger in it. Like how much gold can stick to that finger? If that's all you're able to do is just get your little finger into that river of gold, how much can you get out on your little finger? Because that's basically what digital video represents over the next 5 years. It is an absolutely unprecedented opportunity. It looks big today. It's like, wow, well, it's already big. Well, hey, man, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube, Snapchat, they've dominated. It's over. I sat with in a roundtable in Lisbon at Web Summit with a guy named Josh Hellman, who works for Greylock, a big VC in San Francisco, global. And his seminar was entitled "Mobile is Dead, Long Live Mobile." And the whole point of that was, he said, look, when he joined LinkedIn back in 2003, everybody was saying, the web's done. The web is done. Amazon's won, Google's won search, Yahoo's won. In terms of like editorial, content, finance, all that stuff, email. Everybody's like, it's done. Like AOL's won in the United States. It's done. So there's no point in doing this. We've got to look into other things like fintech, that sort of stuff. So today the discussion is Snap's won, Instagram, Facebook's won, Google's won, YouTube. There's no point in doing video anymore. There's no point in doing mobile because it's over. Now you got to move into AR, VR, and maybe machine learning, and that's it. There's really nothing else going on. And at the talk that I did 2 years ago, I talked about Greg Levy, who, it's funny, just a little aside, like, we were talking about Uber the other day, and I said to Chris, Greg knows somebody at Uber, and actually knows a board member at Uber. It's quite funny. But Greg started a startup that was basically Instagram for doctors. People were like, well, that's so dumb. Like, what doctor's going to have time to get on Instagram? I mean, come on. It's like, no, it's Instagram, it's medical image sharing. Right? That company's worth, I don't know, over 200 million today in less than 3.5 years. 3 years, 3.5 years. Incredible company, figure1.com. If you're interested, check it out. Guys, it's unbelievable. I call him a Kung Fu professor. He's a black belt in Kung Fu. He's also a professor. He has a PhD, he has a law degree. He was a speechwriter for the UN. He's written 2 books. Amazing guy. But that's what I mean by being, we're talking about being elite. That's what that means. And Instagram for doctors, they have 1 million medical professionals using this thing around the world. We've got one medical professional in the room anymore. But what does that mean in terms of the value of that? How valuable is it to have? And what in the United States, I think the ratio is 400 to 1. Is the ratio of medical professionals to non-medical. So just think about that. That's like having 400 million users. Talk about that if you want to. So when you think about opportunities, We're dealing with one of the top 30 companies in the world in terms of brand power, and they own 36 brands themselves. So we have opportunity. I was in London last week, and it's like the problem that we're going to have as a company over the next 6 to 12 weeks is we're going to have to say no to people. So we're actually going to have to turn and go to customers and say, well, look, I'm really sorry, but we can't actually deliver your product for you because you require a little bit of customization that we don't do, and we just have too much work. So the guys know what too much work feels like. 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the morning, 20 days straight. We talk about elite, and that's what elite needs. Is you got to do that and then go, that's normal. Not that you want to do it all the time. You don't want to work until 4 o'clock in the morning for the rest of your life. But understanding elite also means that you're going to achieve a growth rate, and you're going to get to a skill level and a delivery ability so much faster than anybody else at your age, with your whatever your background may be. That's what elite essentially means. And what that elitism, it's not really elitism, but that eliteness, I suppose, in our company, what that's led to is, that's led to a company that is worth more than $1 million per engineer, because we only have 4 engineers. So each engineer in our company is worth $1.25 million in terms of what investors are valuing.
I know, don't come up to me guys afterwards and ask for a check for $1.25 million, because I don't have that much money. So I understand the difference between the cash that's in a company and the value of it. But what's great about that is that we are going to be able to use the work that you've done to generate that value, to raise money from that value, and that means that within, I'm saying this on video, but within the next 18 months, say 20 months. So by December of 2018, my company will have, on average, based on skill level, based on age, we will have the highest paid engineers in the city. Okay, so it'll be a small team, it'll be a special forces team. I don't plan on growing it by adding a bunch of people. But there will be no company in this city, whether it's Amazon or GoPro, and I'm making that statement right now. There's not going to be a company in this city that's going to do more per engineer, or is going to be worth more per engineer. So I know that sounds like a bit of promotion, but it's really important that when you set a goal for yourself as an organization. We saw what Atlas set as a goal for themselves, and what Chris set as a goal for himself when he started out his career in the military. The goals that I've set for myself and for people that work for me is that what I see, the loyalty and the dedication to learning and improvement, taking responsibilities for your own mistakes, understanding that some of those mistakes come from just like being really tired, but breaking through that barrier. I'm sure it's something that you've come, where you just can't believe. You look back and you say, wow, I can't believe that I did that. I know a guy who runs marathons and climbs mountains, and he was a professional marathoner for a couple of years, and he said, I used to be a 5K guy, and then I joined the 10K guys, and I was like, well, that's kind of hard. And the 10K guys were like, hey man, I used to be a marathoner. This is nothing. And he's like, oh, I want to be a marathoner. So I want to be an elite. Like, how fast can I run a marathon in less than 2.25 hours? The goal that this guy set for himself was to run in less than 2 hours, but certain things happen, injuries, issues, but still less than 2.25 hours to run a marathon. It's absolutely incredible. Now the guy climbs mountains because he thinks it's really fun to go up that road. But elite is elite is that, and these are the companies that we're looking at the moment. Some of the prospects that we have on our list. And we've done some really cool sites. As I say, I'll send these out because you probably want to look at them in a little bit more detail. But there's some pretty cool brands in here. This is in terms of leadership. These are the leaders of the finding team. 2 are here in this room, and we're responsible for execution. And then we have. As you can see, some other people on here who are pretty important in their respective fields. So you're going to be, anybody who's interested in joining is also going to be joining an organization that has really global reach and
we're really excited about that, and we're excited about the opportunity to add to our team. As I said, it's going to be selective, so it's not like we're just going to add 10 engineers tomorrow. But we're selectively hiring. We're also hiring somebody who's going to be managing the customer, so the big enterprise customer that we have. We're actually recruiting for a dedicated account manager, so somebody who talks to Manhattan pretty much on a daily basis, Manhattan and New York. So that's really important as well. So somebody, talking to the ladies here, somebody who's really into makeup, somebody who understands product design and what product success looks like, analytics, how to translate analytics over into actionable items and improvements to a product. So, any questions about the company and where we're going and what the opportunities are?
No, getting back a little bit to leadership, how do you motivate your team? You were speaking about money, is it the incentive or?
How do I motivate my team?
How do you make them?
I don't know, they seem to motivate themselves. Actually they motivate me. I think the most important thing in motivation is being really clear to everybody that my door, I don't have a door, but I kind of do now, but my door is always open. You can ask me about anything, talk to me about anything, come to me for advice, and I'll tell you what I think. I'm not going to hold back and be political. I got out of the corporate world because of politics. I don't like politics. I think you should always strike a balance between being straightforward and honest and direct with somebody, but also trying to do it in a constructive way. So I think that I try to help everybody who works for me become better at what they do. I also think that leadership by example is kind of like a no-brainer. I try to get out there and set an example for working hard and being dedicated and promoting and getting as many meetings as I can, as many opportunities as I can to talk about what we do. Compensate people fairly, increase their compensation when they show that they can do stuff, because as much as we want to talk about, hey man, I just love working here, it's like, yeah, I know you do, but it's also important that you feel, especially compared to your peer group, some I don't say specifics, but obviously some people who work in tech are making 2, 3, 4 times what their peers do. And there's a sense of accomplishment and validation of that. Hey, I made the right choice. I'm doing something that feels good, and I'm not being underpaid for it. I think equity is really important as well. And I know the guys are going to say, well, where are our choices? Those are being done, actually. So I think equity is really important as well. I don't know how many Romanian startups do that, but we took 20% of the company and we said, this belongs to the employees. Whether they're current employees, future employees, 20% of the company belongs to those people right now, from the get-go. So, it was not like an uphill battle that they had to fight, like purchase options to maybe be able to get the stock, and all of the weird, murky shit that a lot of startups do in terms of making it really, really difficult for employees to know how much of the company they own and what it's going to be worth, when they cash out at some point in the future. Not that they necessarily want to leave, but when they do, what is that worth? I think it's important for people to know, I own this much of this company, and if we continue to grow and I contribute to that growth, what this could be worth for me, because we do have people who, by the age of 25 minimum, maximum 30, in terms of the people we have right now, my goal is that they can call themselves millionaires. And I don't mean millionaires in lei, I mean millionaires in US dollars. And then to be able to make decisions about what they want to do. What do you want to do for the rest of your life? You're 25, you're 30. What do you want to do? Do you want to be an angel investor? Do you want to start your own company? Do you want to go live somewhere else? What do you want to do? I want to provide that platform to everybody who works. So I think that I hope that my guys, and I hope to say my guys and girls, but my guys from now are motivated by believing in that vision, that believing that I actually am capable of leading this company or convincing investors, convincing customers to pay us, so that investors see customers paying us. Actually, customers paying you is the best investment you can possibly get. Investors are important too, and I want them to see that so that it drives their belief in that we're going in the right direction.
And as a leader, how do you deal with this thought that, as Chris mentioned earlier before, things can go wrong fail?
Things have gone wrong. We have already reached a sort of near-death experience where we had a lot of promise from some early-stage VCs that then kind of, they said, oh, hey, it looks great when they had a PowerPoint deck. And then they saw kind of a proof of concept, and then we started to put it live, and they're like, well, if it's live, I'll just wait. Call me when you have 50,000, 500,000 users, paying users, advertising. They just changed, they just put new obstacles or goals. They said, if you can prove this, then we'll invest. If you can do this, then we'll invest. And we went through like this 3-month period where we were just waiting for one of these VCs to finally say, okay, I'm writing a check, and none of them did. So we had a kind of a near-death experience, and we had to turn to some private funds. And then we got some angel investors, and then we built back up. We had to downsize the team, unfortunately. But my commitment that I made then was that was never going to happen. We were never going to get to a point where we relied too much on investor capital and sort of non-committed investors that were saying all the right things, but actually that weren't following through. And they weren't calling my lawyers. Why aren't you calling the lawyers to go through? It's like I got some signals, and that's when I put on the emergency system, the oxygen, because that was a mistake, right? It was a mistake on my part to overstaff the team in expectation of being able to deliver a market-leading product, and then not having the investors respond in a way because they were actually waiting for that product to truly be market leader by their own criteria. So the big learning for me was you can't trust, unfortunately, what a lot of VCs say to you. Because they're paid to take meetings. They still get paid the same. They take a meeting, they don't take a meeting. Why not take a meeting? Maybe I'll have an idea for another startup that I already think. So you have to be really, really careful about that. And I've been careful in terms of building the company and making sure that it's got really good momentum going forward. So I think when you're a leader, you have to be able to put your hand and say, I don't know the answer. When you don't make it up. And when you make a mistake, say, hey, it was my mistake. It's my mistake we don't have enough staff right now. It's my mistake that it's my fault that people have to work really, really long hours. We should have more people. I didn't push hard enough to get the right headhunters in place when we could have hired more people September, October, November of last year so that they'd be ready and running right now. So, I make mistakes all the time, except that, I just haven't crashed the plane into the ship yet. Yeah.
Well, it's time.
It won't happen. I can guarantee that. Anything you want to add, Chris?
No. Yeah, I think the time's kind of short, but I think one of the things I've enjoyed, I think one of the things in aviation has helped me do is this idea of we had this model in brief, execute, debrief, and kind of taken us across, and now I think these are great questions, and at the end is debriefing yourself and being reflective. It's very hard to do. Humility will help. Like thinking, it's funny, we were talking in the car today about people not understanding why they're successful, because some people make the wrong decision, become successful, or that decision was actually the wrong decision or should have been made, but it actually works out in the end because they get lucky. And now they think, I'm a fucking genius. Those are the worst people to hang around with. And so you can't let yourself get in that trap, and be reflective on, clearly Paul's reflective on the firm here. I try to be reflective on what I've done, and you have to pivot. Atlas Smart will pivot, certainly in the future at some point, to change the model based on the reason it needs to. As people, we pivot, and being reflective, learning lessons, and pivoting. It's key.
I think it's important to note the difference between pivoting and giving up. Now, pivoting is like, the map said go straight, but that's a cliff. You don't just keep going. You go, I have to turn. And that's pivoting is sometimes, I think often, a very responsible thing to do. What you don't want to do is pivot from the exercise, the gym to the couch. That's maybe not the right pivot, right? So you got to make sure that you're not pivoting and giving up. Like, let's just go into this because. So that's really important. You don't pivot from the salad into the French fries. You want to make the right pivot for the right reasons. So I think that one of the other things that we were talking about earlier is that we have a venture capital firm in New York, and you talk about elite talk about execution and brilliance. We were really, really lucky to get funded yet last year by a company called Acadia Woods Partners, venture capital firm in New York. And they've given us a lot of really real targets to hit in order to unlock further funding. But they expressed this confidence. And when I said, companies based in London, but the majority of the value of the company is delivered from Bucharest, Romania, they were like, that's awesome, that's great. And so they also knew from a discussion with the introducers, they knew that I spend 3 weeks, sometimes months on end out here with the team. I'm not like, based somewhere else and checking in on Skype or Slack every once in a while, hey, how's it going? I spend a lot of time out here. So I think it's also really important to make sure you pick your investors right, and make sure that your investors totally understand how the company is structured, where the value is delivered. And I was walking through London the other night, about a month ago, and a guy from a venture capital, family office venture capital firm said, "Tell me about this guy Radu, who works for you. Tell me about him. Tell me, who is he? Where's he from? What is he? How did he get into tech? Why is he interesting? Why have you put, a lot of the value that your company delivers comes through him and his knowledge, and he's the guy that's basically designed your tech stack. So tell me about him." That's the kind of investor that you're really interested in. These guys hopefully will come on board when we do our bigger round later this year. And they wanted to know about it. They're like, this is a key thing for them. And so each one of the team is getting exposure to the client. So our big customer knows our team, and that kind of exposure I think is really important. But I think leadership is what happened over the past week when I was in London. Was we actually went live while I was away, and the execution on that was pretty outstanding. So it's also a really great feeling to know that you have a team that is self-motivated, that's pretty autonomous in terms of its decision-making, its ability to prioritize. And I'm really excited about building the next Bitdefender, the next live rail to come out of this country. So even though it's headquartered in London and raises its money in London and New York, it's a Romanian company in a lot of ways. It's a lot of the DNA, most of the DNA of the company is from here. So I really think that these guys who are all wearing the fine sweatshirts, everybody should be really, really proud of what they've done, because some of the comments that have come back from investors are really, really, really encouraging in terms of what they see, the quality of the product that they see being delivered. So, I'd like to think that this is the right decision that's led to the right outcome. Pivot.
Yeah. What was your winning strategy for getting the first round of investigation? Getting to the first investment to investing in business?
Yeah. So the question was, what was the strategy for getting the first round of investment? Do you mean from like venture capital, like? My own money that paid for everything for a while, and then what I did was I went to people that I trust, who believe in me, and I went to them and I said, I want you guys to look at this and see if this is something that you're interested in. And all three of them said yes, we'll do it. We love this idea, but ultimately we're investing in you, not in the idea itself seems really cool. It seems like you thought through it, but you're the person that we're investing in. So the very, very first investment, which was $135,000, wasn't a huge amount of money, but it was enough to get us going. That came from them. And then the second set of investment was supposed to come from a venture capital group, like 3 different VCs. None of them really came in because they all thought that the other one was going to start, and then nobody did. They're like, well, actually, I don't want to be the only idiot in this. So no, that's when we had that near-death experience. But then the second group of investors were angel investors, mostly from the UK. And that was, and what got them really, really excited was the quality of the execution. So, Radu and his team had built a product that was really fun to use. It was engaging, it was interesting, it was better looking than anything else out of the market. So, you start off with the idea, but if you know, that's where you're going to get your first investment as an idea, and maybe you as an individual, but then you better execute. And if you don't execute, you are not going to get any more investment. You can't go back and say, oh, well, we kind of didn't really do much with that, and kind of need a little bit more fees. It's not going to happen. You must prove that what you've done with investor capital, so those same set of investors have invested again, and they're investing now for the third time. So that's always a good sign when people are coming back and saying, okay, yeah, we want to follow this up. We like what you've done, we believe in what you've done. So the first one is always make sure you sell your vision, and then second one is make sure you execute like crazy so that people actually can see that you're good at doing things. Great. Thank you very much. I appreciate it. We've done almost like 2 hours.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.